Hi, I'm Tom Elliot and welcome to another financial market update for Hodges Real Estate. Well, there's plenty of positives and a few negatives for the property market at the moment. Let's start with the good news. The clearance rate around Melbourne is averaging over 70% at the moment. This indicates a very healthy market where essentially the forces of supply and demand are in balance. And remember this, even for the 30% of properties that do not sell under the hammer at auction, they do tend to get sold, the bulk of them at least, in a week or two after the event. So that means that the market is doing pretty well. On top of that, real estate agent reports and statistics confirm this, that house prices have pretty much made up all the lost ground over the past 2 years since the boom, if you can call it that, of 2010. So house prices are not quite at their all-time peaks in Melbourne, but they're not very far from it. Channel 9's The Block. Now, I'm not a huge watcher of reality television programs, but if you did happen to watch that, every one of those apartments in South Melbourne went for an average of around $200,000 over the reserve. These were apartments, not houses. They were well done, yes, but compared to the equivalent show 2 years ago, when only 1 out of 4 houses on offer in Richmond actually sold, The Block's results again tell you that the real estate market in the right parts of Melbourne is pretty buoyant at the moment. Interest rates, well, they're very low. In previous months on this report, I've been explaining how 2, 3 and 4 year fixed rates represent excellent value right now. Glenn Stevens, the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia, came out towards the end of July and said there was room to cut rates further. But whether or not you get another cut in variable rates right now doesn't actually matter, because the fixed rates on offer are pricing in still 2 more cuts in variable rates. I fix most of my debt. I think it's an excellent strategy right now. Fixed rate loans, especially over the 3 year time horizon, are as low as they have ever been. And eventually, very low interest rates, accompanied with the bank's willingness to lend, and there's no sign that that's going away anytime soon, does have a positive impact on real estate prices, particularly house prices. Also, the Australian economy, it has slowed. The economic growth rate, depending on which politician or which statistician you want to listen to at the moment, is between about 2.5% and 2.75%. Now, that's not much more than inflation, but it is positive. It's slowing, but it is doing okay. And the good news is that the unemployment rate across Australia is not really rising. In fact, if it's going to go up anywhere, it's more likely to go up in the resource-rich states of WA and Queensland, because one bit of bad news on the horizon, or one of the bad bits, is that resource prices could fall a fair bit further, and indeed the share prices on the stock market of the big resource companies, plus the sorts of businesses that supply services to the resource industries, their share prices have been going down. But here in Victoria, where we don't really have much of a resource industry, or at least a minerals industry, unemployment has been pretty steady at 5.5%, 5.6%. Again, another real positive for the real estate market. And Melbourne's population, there's so much talked about rates of immigration and what are we going to do with asylum seekers, etc, etc, etc. But again, in a city like Melbourne, which is now growing at between 75 and 80,000 people per annum, yes, you have the problems with congestion, hence all the debates about should we have a freeway, should we have a new train line, should we do something about public transport. But again, it's good news for house prices. Housing starts, by and large, are not keeping up with the increase in Melbourne's population. People have to live somewhere, and that means rising population means, again, in the longer term, rising house prices. So all that's pretty positive. Well, what about the negatives? It's a very old adage of the retail business and sometimes the real estate business that people have a habit of keeping their hands in their pockets ahead of an election. The good news is it doesn't appear to be affecting real estate results at the moment, but consumer confidence has been pretty weak. Secondly, the polls are very close. Even if we have an election now, depending on which poll you look at, it could end up in another hung parliament like we saw back in 2010. Now, supporters of the coalition obviously don't want to see this happen. Supporters of Labor would be thrilled. I guess another political issue that's a problem is that Mr Rudd, since he became Prime Minister again, has done so many U-turns. We have the U-turn on the carbon tax, the U-turn on the fringe benefits tax as it applies to salary sacrifice cars, the U-turn on asylum seekers. What other U-turns are out there? No one's talked about negative gearing on investment properties yet, but I do worry that a cash-strapped government might look at this, even though it could be political suicide. They might look at people who buy property for investment purposes and say, here's a source of some money, why don't we go out and grab it? I guess the final thing as well, just in the state of Victoria, since the end of June, we have seen the removal of the first home buyers grant. Interestingly, that does not appear to have affected the market one iota. The demand for houses under the $600,000 price point is very strong. So that was a piece of government policy which should have been got rid of quite some time ago. And as I said, the good news is it doesn't seem to be affecting the market to date. So overall, what do I think is going to happen? Well, I reckon the positives outweigh the negatives. Most of the negatives are political. They are by definition short term. Irrespective of what happens in the election, people will get over it fairly quickly. There's already pent up demand for housing in Melbourne. People have got low interest rates. The clearance rate is stabilising, I would say, well above 70% and will do so in the coming weeks and months. So overall, I think when you put those things together, short of some unforeseen shock to the global economy for which there are absolutely no signs at the moment, I cannot see any reason why the recent strength in house prices wouldn't continue, at least right up until Christmas. Okay, thanks for your company. I've been Tom Elliot for the Hodges Market Real Estate, and I look forward to your company again, same time next month.